We can make things like guava beer. It's crazy, but you can do it. And you can do it here because we got fresh guava and it's fantastic. And people love guava here. So there's a lot of perks that we have to being in the state of Florida when you're talking about craft beer.
I'm Dalia Colon, and this is The Zest. Citrus, seafood, Spanish flavor, and Southern charm. The Zest celebrates cuisine and community in the Sunshine State. There's a holiday coming up, but it doesn't involve flowers or candy. February 15th is Florida Craft Beer Day. We'll meet the founder coming up.
I wanted to make sure that you know about stpetersburgfoodies.com. If you're looking for fun and good food in St. Pete, there are restaurant reviews and podcasts featuring local chefs, restaurateurs, happy hour suggestions, and a lot more. It's all online at stpetersburgfoodies.com.
If you could invent a holiday to celebrate your favorite food or drink, what would it be? For Donnie Gallagher, it's Florida Craft Beer Day. In 2015, the Clearwater resident convinced fellow craft beer lover and then-Tampa Mayor Bob Buckhorn to declare February 15th Florida Craft Beer Day in Tampa. I recently spoke to Donnie about what makes Florida's craft beer scene unique and why he says craft beer is here to stay. Why are you so passionate about craft beer? A lot of people drink beer, but you live it.
Thank you for saying that. That's true. And it's actually been a part of my life since 2007. So I actually had about 5 years of formal training under, let's just call it our good friend Bud. And Bud is one of the biggest beer manufacturers in the world. This was a much different beer scene back then in 2007. But ever since then, I was inspired because I found that when I was with our friend Bud, my role was basically teaching people how to pair beer and food. And what I found was that people were fascinated by it. They take the knowledge that we shared and they would go to their local pub and impress their friends. They would sit down and tell their wife, who's probably not interested at all or could have been back then before craft beer was a thing. So who really knows? But it's just been great. And people have been interested in learning that stuff. And so part of the podcast mission was to set that up and just lead with that foot forward because people really did enjoy learning. And so we do all we can to inspire that learning to keep going by just going out of your bubble, going down the street, finding what's new. If you're at a restaurant you love, try the new seasonal thing. I love talking to people, and so it's really just been a part of my life for a long, long time now.
So you actually worked for Budweiser. We're not just talking about drinking in your dorm room.
Yeah, no, nicknames aside. Yeah, I was actually Anheuser-Busch before they were part of InBev. So during that transition, I was part of the team, helped lay out the marketing plan and the strategy, how that went. Learning from big beer was critical. It was huge because you learn from big beer. I mean, obviously they became big beer for a reason. As craft beer just, continued to grow in the country and locally around me, I just saw all these little breweries popping up. And I said, hey, people still love to talk about beer. I learned a lot from the brewing process, how to market beer, how to talk about beer, how to enjoy beer, how to get non-beer drinkers into beer. It's surprising what you can really do with beer and food. And that stuff stayed with me forever.
What is craft beer? I think a lot of people who drink the bigger brands might look at it as a hipster thing. Sure. Why should we care about craft beer?
Craft beer is much more than just something you drink. And you can look at this now as you drive down the street. There's mom and pop brewers and bar owners that are brew pubs or tap rooms or what have you. There's families that are in brewing. There's local economies. There's billions of dollars nationally, hundreds of millions of dollars for just the state of Florida alone, hundreds of thousands of jobs for Floridians and nationwide. That number continues to grow, even though we're in this kind of weird time, but it's a community really more than just a delicious beverage that will, get you feeling good.
Is there a difference in the taste if you put two glasses of beer in front of me and one was a craft beer and one was a big name beer? What would I notice? What's the difference?
The big name beer brews, I don't want to say it's generic, but they brew a type of beer that everybody will drink, right? Statistically, if you're going to put a product out on a mass scale, you want it to be uniformly accepted. And that's fantastic. The beauty of craft beer and the thing that you can't get from a big beer that you can get in craft beer are things like subtle nuances, flavors, flavor diversity, different things that big beer just can't either monetize or they just don't want to. Little beer making, and I say little beer, craft beer making much smaller scale can experiment. They can push the boundaries of what this stuff can do. They can really get you, again, out of your shell, out of your comfort zone. You may have never had a black pepper, strawberry, basil lager, but let me tell you, it's one of my favorite beers I've ever tried. Things like that you'd never get from big beer.
Yeah, I want one now. Just the words, black pepper, strawberry, basil. I'm like, I will eat that in a salad. I will drink it in a glass.
I'm telling you, it's fantastic.
Oh, that's amazing. Do you brew your own beer?
I do. I've been brewing now for over 4.5 years. So pretty much, again, when we started all this stuff, I was like, you know what? I talk about it enough. I might as well talk the talk and walk the walk. So I started brewing beer. And actually that recipe I just referenced, and it was a pale ale in my recipe, not a lager, but that's my favorite beer that I've ever brewed. Black pepper, strawberry, and basil. 3 amazing flavors that really bring out some spicy pale ale notes that go well with just about anything you could eat too. Really good stuff.
Oh, that's a good tip. So I'm sure a lot of people would like to get into brewing their own beer, especially as we're all home more these days. It could be a fun hobby to start in the new year. What advice do you have for beginners?
Sure. So the internet is your friend. And of course, part of that community that I keep referencing about craft beer is that not only the brewers and the people that do it professionally, but the hobbyists and those who do it for fun or just do it to experiment are also very interested in sharing knowledge and being helpful for the industry and the community. When I say community, I'm not lying. Like, you can go on Facebook and find about 100 groups within 20 miles of your house that you can tap into for knowledge and sourcing, recipes or how-tos or getting recommendations, things like that. It truly is a community. But the hardest part about home brewing is simply starting. The equipment is cheap enough. The knowledge is out there. The time that it takes is like you said, we're all home now. It's it might be a couple hour process, but from start to finish, you could have, it all done and learn and have this great experience. So it's really more simple than you think it is. It's as simple as making a pot of pasta, really. That's about as hard as craft brewing is.
Really?
Home brewing, excuse me. That's about as hard as home brewing is. I apologize.
Oh, I just made a pot of pasta today. I might have to give craft beer home brewing a try. What is it about Florida's craft beer scene? I know breweries are popping up all over, but what's unique about Florida?
The unique part about Florida and Florida craft beer is that we have a very eclectic state. So we've got a whole ton of different beer drinkers and non-beer drinkers. We've got a bunch of different, little economies and little nuggets of town. We've got a South Florida crowd who drinks a totally different product than, say, folks in Gainesville or here on the Tampa Bay, side of the state. We've got the Central Florida folks heavy on orange and citrus. I mean, the real estate that we have to grow unique ingredients for home brew and for craft beer, really. And then the people that drink it, I think it's a very unique population compared to, again, looking at Colorado or looking at Utah or California or really any other state where you would assume, Portland, Oregon, where craft beer is just the thing. It's a different market here. And I think that benefits not only the craft breweries that are here, but it also benefits the people that are here because we can make things like guava beer. It's crazy, but you can do it. And you can do it here because we got fresh guava and it's fantastic. And people love guava here. So there's a lot of perks that we have to being in the state of Florida when you're talking about craft beer.
Oh, I do love guava. Tell me about Florida Craft Beer Day. This was your idea?
Yeah. So, I got to give some credit to Bob Buckhorn because he actually he acknowledged the fact that we started this thing and it was really just an idea with another few folks that were in the industry that wanted to say, hey, we need to recognize craft beer. So we did some research, and a good buddy of mine marked a note. If you Google his name, he's written now, I believe, 2 full books on Florida craft beer. And I think one's a history of, and then one's kind of now where we are. But in talking with him, he laid a couple details on the table, one of which was in 1897, Florida's first craft brewery opened in Ybor City, Florida. The etching is still on the side of the building today. If you go down Ybor, it's one of the tallest buildings. It's got a big American flag on the top of it, and it has Florida Brewing Company written on the side. That was intriguing to me. And as I peeled back the onion that was, what is craft beer here, we just learned of the rich history and the diversity that Florida really did for craft beer. And the first one in the whole state, in the whole southeast, was right here in Ybor City. So it's really a fantastic thing to celebrate. And in doing so, we established that brewery actually opened on February 15th. And the 14th is a pretty heavy media day, or at least a lot of attention, but the 15th happened to be slow. So what we said is, hey, listen, let's stop the presses. Let's have this thing. Let's really pull some celebration behind craft beer. And we actually reached out to the mayor's office. At the time, it was Bob Buckhorn. He said, I love craft beer. Let's do this thing. So we went to the brewery, the old building that is now Spoke Law Firm. They're the first brewery there. We had an event. We invited a bunch of folks out. And we said, this is really something. And so every year since 2015, we've been having and celebrating this event. And the mayor, though sometimes he does come, sometimes he did not, show up, he would send a proclamation. And again, if you Google that, the city of Tampa, under the Mayor Bob Buckhorn, has established Florida Craft Beer Day every 15th of February for the last, 4 or 5 years here. And we're just so happy and excited to have the city on board.
That's amazing. You really left your mark. Are you from Florida?
Born and raised. I'm that guy. Orlando. I was born and raised in Orlando. There's not many of us, but yes, I have been, my whole life in Florida.
Oh, wow. You're a special unicorn then. What happens on Florida Craft Beer Day? How can we celebrate?
The beauty is we've celebrated a number of different ways. So what we always do is we tie in either a craft brewery locally or a distributor, somebody that we can help. And the first event was fantastic. We had Big Storm out there. We had the folks from Pepin Distributing were out there. We had the mayor, of course. We had a bunch of media out there. It was a blast. But since then, we've changed it up just about every year. So sometimes what we've done in the past is we'll have Q&A, with a podcast that we have talking about beer. We invite our listeners to come out, and we kind of gathered and we would all, celebrate. And at 7:00, we'd raise a toast. And we actually extended that virtually before virtual, was such a commonly adopted practice. We had a simul toast. So at 8:00, no matter where you were, you could tune into the live stream, raise a glass and say, here's the Florida craft beer. And we were really celebrating the jobs, the people, the community, the economic value, all this stuff that craft beer brought to our state. We were just happy to be celebrating it.
So do you think craft beer is here to stay? I know the first craft brewery has been around for over a century, but from an outside perspective, people might think it's another fad. Is it a fad?
Well, and that's the thing. Even before, the country and the world fell into what we are now with the COVID-19 threat and things like that, breweries, there was talk of a bubble. And they always talk about a bubble of how, just as you described, is it a fad? Is it something that just hipsters can do? And it's not really for the general public and yada, yada. I would say that's quite the opposite. If you look at an economy or a place like the UK, right, over in Great Britain, there is a brewery per capita, I believe, of 1 to 25, which means that, for every 25 people, there's a brewery, which is crazy. Now, in the United States, it's literally 1 to, 100, 200. I'm not quite sure, but it's astronomical. And all that means that we have plenty more room for breweries. Ideally, how the best economy work for beer is that there's a brewery on every corner. That way, what we have here in Tampa may be very different from a Miami brewery or one that's right down the road from you. And that's the beauty of it, is that all these little folks can do unique and different things to bring diversity, to bring uniqueness to their spaces, and bring so much more. But to briefly answer the question, yes, there is plenty more room for breweries, and it is not a fad. It's not going anywhere. These breweries are making an impact in their economies. They're here to stay. And trust me, if you ask any of them, they'd prefer it to be that way.
I like that. It's like Cheers. You've got your corner bar with your
really could be.
watermelon and basil or whatever it was, your strawberry basil, craft beer. Okay, tell me about your podcast.
So our show, basically, we started this thing saying, hey, we love craft beer, but what else can we bring? I'm a big Star Wars nerd. I'm a geek at heart. I've got all sorts of gadgets and technology pieces that I love to collect. We all play games. So essentially we said, all right, what is the demographic we're really going for? And we landed on craft beer first, with a geek news kind of kicker to it. So every week we meet, we talk about, new movies, new TV shows, new video games. But we've been able to experience some really unique things in embracing both craft beer and this geek news, because the cultures of both those demographics really overlap quite a bit. And so we've been able to go out and be invited to Smithsonian events that were local, or at local, galleries and art exhibits here. We've been to Star Wars Celebration and covered those in the past. It's really just this collection of craft beer stories and geek news that we like to bring together to just encourage people to pursue what you like, have a cold beer, just relax for a minute.
Yeah, we all need to relax. What's the name of the podcast?
It's Craft Brews and Geek News.
Oh, that's perfect. So when you're done listening to the Zest, you just pop on over to Craft Brews and Geek News. Okay, Donnie, I have a little surprise. Do you like games?
I love games.
I'm so glad you said that. I think the most fun part of craft beers are some of the names that people come up with. So I was doing some Googling, and the game is Real or Fake Florida Craft Beers. I'm going to give you some names. One of them's real. The other one I just made up, and let's see if you can guess just for fun. So one of these is real. Pride of Polk County or Straight Outta Lakeland, which is the real Florida craft beer?
Straight Outta Lakeland. It's got to be.
That is real. It's an IPA from Swan Brewing in Lakeland. You're good at this. How did you know that?
Well, Swan Brewing, my brother lives in Lakeland, and Swan Brewing is actually a great place. So that blackberry, can I give you back a name?
Yeah. Oh, please.
That blackberry strawberry basil beer that I was referring to was actually a clone recipe that I first had at Lakeland Brewing Company, which no longer exists. Sorry to say that. Swan Brewery is still there, and Swan Brewery actually wasn't there at the time, but that beer was called Lipstick on a Pig.
Oh my gosh.
And so my beer is called Lipstick on a Zombie Pig because I'm resurrecting a recipe from a brewery that is closed. So those names really do exist.
Wow. Okay, you're going to ace this then. I wonder if some of the ones I made up are actually real. So you mentioned zombies. So let's go to the next one. Is it I See Dead People or Devil and God Are Raging Inside Me? One of those is real.
I've never heard either one. So this is a true, honest guess here. But I would definitely vote on the second one if I was going to think what was hippie and kind of out there enough to be a catchy name for a beer.
Devil and God Are Raging Inside Me?
Correct.
Yes, you are correct. It's a Belgian quad from Wicked Barley Brewing Company in Jacksonville. These would be great, like, indie band names, I think, too.
I mean, you can even go down what you just described and try to say, is that a real ingredient? A Belgian quad from,
Oh, that's true.
It's pretty crazy how they can get complicated.
There are little hints in there. Okay, we'll do a couple more. Which is the real one? The House That Rock Built or Mighty Fortress?
The House That Rock Built is sticking out for some reason, but it could, again, I've not heard of either one. So your guess, that's my guess.
Oh, I got you. That's one I made up. The real beer is Mighty Fortress, and it's an amber lager from Castle Church Brewing Company in Orlando, which is a combination church and brewery. Who wouldn't want to go there on a Sunday?
Right?
Okay, let's do two more. I'm looking at my list here, and I don't know if I can stump you. All right. Which is the real beer? No Lifeguard on Duty or Night Swim?
Night Swim from Coppertail is
the real beer. Donnie! Yes!
Although the first one did sound like a beer I've heard of, but I don't know, so I definitely know Night Swim.
Oh, yes, you're right. Coppertail Brewing in Tampa. Mm-hmm. I should have gotten these from a different state because apparently you know all the Florida beers. All right, let's do one more. Which one should I pick? You're really good at this. All right, which is the real beer? Fruit by the Foot or Pineapple Mango Coconut Evil Kiss?
I think there's too much going on with the coconut mango, so I'm going to go Fruit by the Foot.
Got you again. Yep, okay, I just made that up from my childhood and maybe yours too.
Who doesn't love a good Fruit by the Foot?
I know. No, Pineapple Mango Coconut Evil Kiss is from Proof Brewing Company in Tallahassee. So I had to go all the way up to Tallahassee to stump you. Well, thank you for playing. There's no prize, but it was fun. And it was so great to talk to you. Is there anything else you want everyone to know about craft beer in Florida?
Sure. I would say specifically, just before we go, there is something that you can ask for anybody that's out there listening and interested and still a little confused, as to how they get into beer. Maybe it's just not their thing. I really encourage everybody to try beer, to get out of their comfort zone and to walk down the street or to get a ride somewhere and enjoy something that you haven't. And if you try it once a week, you'd be surprised how many beers you could go through, how many things you could try, flavors you could unlock. But what people don't understand about beer is that beer is food. There's literally 4 ingredients: water, hops, yeast, and barley. And that's really it. And those same ingredients are in other things that you consume already. By saying beer is food, people don't understand how well it complements food. you can bring out new flavors on having a beer with a cheesecake or a pizza or something else that you think that's well beyond the baseball stadium hot dog and that warm beer that you got served. It is so much more complex and interesting. And if you take a minute to understand that and to peek behind the curtain and look at the people that do this, that breathe this every day, you'll notice that these brewers, these communities, these families are just fantastic, like any other business or anything else you can be passionate about. And there's so much to learn. So I just encourage anybody out there to get out of your comfort zone and try something new.
Donnie Gallagher is the founder of Florida Craft Beer Day and co-host of the podcast Craft Brews and Geek News. You can find more information about Florida Craft Beer Day and a link to the Facebook group that Donnie moderates for craft beer enthusiasts on our website, thezestpodcast.com. I'm Dalia Colon. I produce The Zest with help from Cheyenne Jaglau and Mark Hayes. Copyright 2021, WUSF Public Media.